Today we kick off our season preview series. We're going to start off with the teams in the Atlantic Division, and we're starting today with the Buffalo Sabres. Today we look at what to expect from them this coming season, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. So this is the beginning of our season previews that we do before every NHL season here. I wasn't sure exactly what order we were going to do the teams in. I decided to go by division. So we're going to start with the Atlantic Division. Next, I'll do one of the divisions in the Western Conference and go back and forth till we cover all 32 teams before the season gets underway with NHL action in October. I know some people like to do season previews, or other content creators or outlets a little sooner than this. I like to wait as long as possible because there's always other roster changes, late signings, or maybe a trade last minute, something. So I can't wait too much longer to make sure I have time to get these all done before the season starts. So I want to get things going here today with Buffalo. So we're going to look at last year's quick recap, how things went, who led them, we'll take a look at their cap situation, what's their playoff situation been the last number of years, things like that. And then we're going to take a look at how the roster has changed. So subtractions, additions, what space are they working with? Is there any prospects jumping in to the roster? What's their projected lineup looking like now? And what questions face this team going into the season? So let's first recap the 22-23 season for Buffalo before we look at how things change and what to expect. So last year, the Sabres finished just outside the playoffs. It's the closest they've come in making it in a while. They had a record of 42, 33-7 for 91 points. Took some big steps forward. Special teams were good in the power play, not so good in the PK. They had the ninth best power play in the NHL, 23.4%. The PK was not good though, 73%, 28th best. They scored a lot of goals, 296, which was top 10, 7th overall to be exact. But they were 26 overall in goals against, giving up 300. So they still had a -4 goal differential. So ultimately, this team showed that offensively they get a lot stronger, but keeping the puck out of their net was still an issue. Some of their top scorers last year, including Tage Thompson leading the way with 94 points. Big season for him. Jeff Skinner at 82. Alex Tuch at 79. That's certainly a bargain contract he's on. And Rasmus Dahlin certainly he had a bit of another breakthrough again, and really, already considered one of the best young defensemen in the league. Really pushed himself up that list, and certainly going to be somebody who's in the Norris conversation, I think, for many years to come. Had 73 points. This team, unfortunately, like I said, though, did miss the playoffs. It's 12 consecutive years now. One of the longer streaks around the league of missing the playoffs. They haven't made it since 2011. So that's a long time coming, but they were just out. And today we're going to look at how things change and discuss if this might be the year that streak comes to an end. Now, as we sit today, the Buffalo Sabres currently have $8.7 million in salary cap space. So we could potentially still see another move or something. They have room if they want to continue trying to shake things up, add, or even take on a higher value contract or something of that nature. Now, let's take a look at how the roster has changed throughout the offseason. And to be honest, there's not a lot. So when you look at additions and subtractions, there's only a few names on each list. Subtraction-wise, goaltender Craig Anderson appears to have finally ventured back into retirement, and defenseman Ilya Lyubushkin was traded to the Anaheim Ducks. And that's really about it for players that are off the roster, at least those who were regulars. I mean, we saw a couple minor things near the deadline, but that's it. They brought in a couple of defensemen, on free agent contracts for additions. They signed Eric Johnson, the veteran from Colorado, and Connor Clifton. These two guys should be able to hopefully grab top 6 roles in the decor for the Sabres, but that's it. Otherwise, it's largely the same team as before. So that's certainly in some ways good and in some ways a little bit concerning. And we'll get into that here in a minute. As far as any prospects that you'd expect to really keep a watch on this year, the main one that you're going to see at the NHL level jump into the lineup here and have more of an impact is going to be Devin Levi. I think Devin Levi can be in the conversation for the Calder Trophy. If he can play, I know we get a small sample size of Levi at the end of last year. And if that sample size was an indication of what's to come, he's going to be real good. I mean, his college numbers were phenomenal. So this isn't like a huge shock, but, to make the jump to the NHL to be that good that quickly, was certainly a very encouraging thing for the Sabres, and getting the goaltending situation solidified is important. So he'll be the main one at the NHL level to really watch and see the impact on this current NHL roster. As far as other guys to watch to see their development, I don't know that they'll have any impact at the NHL level, but they still have guys like Matt Savoy, Zach Benson, Noah Ostlund, Yuri Kulich, and others. So they still, as much as they've made some major progress moving forward, there's still some young players coming up here that can certainly have an impact on this roster in the not too distant future. Now, in this series, I also want to take a look at, as I talk about each team, looking at a breakthrough and a bounce back candidate to see what players could really qualify for this kind of category. And for a bounce back candidate, I've decided the player you really should watch for the Buffalo Sabres this coming year is Jordan Greenway. A couple of years back in the 2021 season with the Minnesota Wild, he had 32 points. He was progressing more upward, had made good development. The year after, his numbers were a little bit lower, and then last year was a real struggle. Ended up getting traded to Buffalo. And he's at a point where, he's making $3 million. It's a good chunk of salary cap that he needs to bounce back and play better to keep us roll here. And, they could really benefit from him. He's got a huge size, can play physical, and obviously with 32 points before can contribute offensively. So I think he's a guy that's going to be looking to have a much better year. As far as breaking through, I'm looking personally for Peyton Krebs. He's one of the younger players on the Sabres who hasn't really found that next gear yet, and I think he's been a little slower developing, so I'd like to see him take some big steps this year. I know JJ Peterka had a good rookie season last year. I do wonder, though, if this could be a year where he gets a more solid top six role and possibly comes through even more and really breaks through and takes it up another level. So I really think Krebs and Peterka are going to be the main ones you see take big steps forward here, and we'll see where that goes. Now, your projected lineup as of right now, this is courtesy of dailyfaceoff.com. I will say that this is more of a depth chart than it is an exact lineup. Some of the lines that they have posted on their site are exact. Some are basically more like, they're just really a listing of who's the top in each position. So you obviously your top line right now could be Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, Jeff Skinner. You get Dylan Cousins, Casey Middlestat, JJ Peterka. Likely, going to be a top six role as well. Krebs, Greenway, Olofsson for potential third line, and then Tyson Jost, Okposo, and Gergensons could be your fourth line. You still got Jack Quinn in there as well. I'm not sure exactly where Jack Quinn kind of fits into the equation, but he could certainly be on this roster, and I suspect he will be. Obviously, he was on injured reserve to finish out last year, so we'll see where Quinn fits in the role here. He could also be another guy to kind of take things up another level this year as well. On the blue line, you're looking at Samuelson, Dahlin, Power, Clifton, Yokoharu, and Johnson. So clearly this team, they have three of their real top four guys that they're looking for long term with Dahlin, Power, and Samuelson. Clifton and Johnson were only basically brought in as placeholders. I know the Sabres, if there's anything that we're going to look to see them do throughout the during the season that hasn't been done during the offseason, it would be to try to add another top four defenseman. That's something that has been long rumored and certainly not something that was accomplished. Between the pipes, we should expect Devin Levi and UPL, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Eric Comrie's in the mix there too. Not sure exactly how this is all going to go. Somebody's likely going to have to go through waivers because I don't see Levi, not getting a spot. So at the end of the day, the Sabres do have a little bit of options there between the pipes. I think they go with Levi and UPL, and Comrie becomes the odd man out going on waivers around the beginning before the season starts. That's at least what I think will happen, but we'll see. So to me, if you're looking at the top questions facing this franchise, I mean, they proved they could score. They were a dangerous team last year, but they also did not really they can't kill penalties very well, and they don't defend the greatest. The goals against were way too high, and this is largely the same team. Now, obviously, goaltending will play a role here. Now, if they can solidify this and get a solid year out of Devin Levi, it's a lot to ask of the rookie netminder, mind you. How much can he play and sustain that level of play? That's the question, right? If he played 25, 30 games next year as more of a backup and gave you that solid net mining, well, that'd be great. But, are you going to expect him to play 60 games and give you that? That might be something that might not be reasonable for him. We don't know yet because he's such a small sample size and still so young that we just don't fully know, right? I mean, he's got high expectations, but it's going to be his first full NHL season. So it's difficult to say exactly how that all goes. But to me, the penalty killing and the defending is the biggest concern. They haven't really done a whole lot to address that. Certainly Johnson and Clifton will help some. I don't know that they really move the needle a whole lot, though, to be honest. I mean, Erik Johnson's going to be a guy who is willing to block shots. He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. But he's also been injured a lot. So, is he going to play a full 80-game schedule? You don't know, right? So, to me, those are the concerns. Certainly as well, can they finally end the streak and get in the playoffs is another big question. And that's the part that many wonder. I mean, they were so close last year that, to me, I think the odds are very favorable that they do get in. Mainly, like I said, I just think even though the defensive numbers were not pretty, they can be even just a little bit better. They will stand a chance. I mean, in this Atlantic Division, obviously you're going to expect teams like the Leafs to be good. They've been good for a while. Florida is coming off a finals appearance. I would expect, but they're also dealing with some injuries. They're definitely going to be a good team. When you're looking at who's going to finish top 3 or 4, Tampa's still going to be in the mix. Is Boston going to regress? We'll discuss that when we do their preview, but that's certainly a big question with the subtractions in their lineup. You have a surging Senators team. Detroit made a lot of changes as well. So, how are things really going to go? And in my opinion, a lot of that really boils down to how much improvement we see in the defending and the goaltending. I don't know that you're going to see offensively another huge jump forward. I mean, there's some guys that could certainly get better, sure. But can Tage Thompson keep going? Is there another level yet? I'd be surprised. I mean, he's already close to a 100-point player at this point. So not going to be easy to see huge growth in that part of the team. It could get better, but I imagine if it is, it's going to be slight compared to what we've seen in the last year or two. It's the other end of the ice where we need to see those improvements. So certainly, defensively speaking, is what I expect them to keep an eye on, and maybe early in the season or throughout training camp is when we see an addressed situation in that front. For example, Rasmus Dahlin is due for a contract extension. There's rumors he's looking for 8 years at $10.5 million. I don't know if they want to, have that be a distraction or if they want to try to take care of that as soon as possible. So that could be a training camp or early season piece of business that gets taken care of. And of course, like I said, maybe moving somebody, making a deal for another top 4 guy. They could find one more defenseman and they can move Clifton, Jokiharju, and Johnson all down a peg, would be very beneficial. And they could round out that top 4. That's what this team right now is missing, is another top 4D. I mean, there are some prospects on this team. Most of what they have coming up, though, are more so in the forward group. There are some D. I'm not saying there's no D that won't make the jump, but I don't know that there's a clear-cut answer there that's going to be ready and able to take on that role, anytime soon. Like when you've seen guys like Power come in and Dahlin and Samuelson, they were able to have an adjustment period, but they still were able to get to a good level pretty quick. I don't know that they were fortunate to draft those players. I don't know if there's another one coming anytime soon that's going to take that job. So that's going to likely be a trade because there wasn't much in the free agent market. So if they can't address that or goaltending doesn't hold up, that will be what will cause this playoff streak to go to 13 years. I'm not going to proclaim 100% that they're going to be a playoff team. I'm going to wait and see, do predictions closer to the beginning of the season. I'm going to see what else the rest of the teams, including the Sabres, do over the next few weeks here as we get into camp soon and beginning of the season as we're ready to start. But for right now, I think the Sabres are definitely going to be in the mix. I think it's quite possible they make the playoffs. I'm certainly going to hold them in that role of being, probably a wild card team would be my thoughts. But A lot of changes can take place here, and look, it could be more movement in the playoff picture than we might have assumed. Recap, the Sabres are largely the same team with a few minor changes. Will that be enough to get them in? Will rookie Devin Levi be the missing piece here to take them to the playoff promised land and get this streak ended at 12 years? Let me know your thoughts on what you expect from the Buffalo Sabres for the upcoming 23-24 NHL season, and we'll discuss further down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, stick around. Plenty more teams to come in this series, as well as all the news and rumors from around the entire NHL. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.